Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with author, comics creator Rodney Barnes. Rodney, thank you for braving the traffic and joining me for this talk.
Thank you for having the interest in talking to me.
Absolutely.
Apologies for being a little
Absolutely.
late again.
No worries, no worries at all. Glad you're here. And I usually start by mentioning a couple of titles that folks out there might know you for. I'll start with Killadelphia, well over 100 issues, sprawling, spanning series. You've also worked on Falcon, Blackula, and a number of other stories across media. So, by means of a first question, I'm an English teacher, so I'm always curious about what draws people to writing and storytelling.
It's funny. My mother was a school teacher,
Mhm.
and I'm an only child. So reading was huge when I was a kid. Reading comic books, movies, TV was sort of my brothers and sisters and parents, for lack of a better word or relationship. Um, when I was in the eighth grade, I had a journalism slash English teacher, Mr. J. Silverberg, who had me write an assignment because I was the class clown and I wouldn't shut up. And he said, if you ever put as much effort into writing as you did being a class clown, you might one day be a really good writer.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that kind of stuck in the back of my head. And I really didn't take it seriously because I come from a small town, Annapolis, Maryland. And I didn't know writers. I didn't know that to be like an occupation. Like, how do you become a writer? Like, who's going to pay you? Blah, 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 blah. And it seemed like you had to be a lot smarter than me to have a life as a writer for a
Mhm.
living.
Mhm.
But I sort of ran out of other options and I figured I would give it a shot. And things sort of kind of worked out. It's a long, winding road, but things sort of kind of worked out.
I love it. Love it. Eighth grade was a big year for me too. That's the first time a teacher looked at me and said, "You might want to think about being a writer." And then I was an eighth grade English teacher for 8 years. So,
Ah,
so yay for eighth grade.
there you go. That's the
There it
year.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, wondering about some of the best collaborations that you've had so far, as well as this thing of comics and what it allows you to do and the stories that you want to tell.
I mean, Jason Sean Alexander, my co-creator of Killadelphia, is by far the best. Not so much, all the other folks have been fantastic as well. But I think with Jason, it's been more intimate because we live so close together. Yeah,
Mhm.
he's like a mile away. And we spent more time working together in a room and
Mhm.
discussing the project. Everybody, excuse me, everybody else, like the folks I do the Star Wars books with and Josh Cassara, who I did Falcon with, we met once or twice and we talked on the phone once or twice, but it wasn't as intimate as it's been with Jason. And our ups and downs and getting to know each other as people and our respective families and everything else, it's just been a different process, but a great one, and I think it's made me a better writer as far as comics are concerned. And Jason was already established in the culture of comics. Like, they're different things. Like, comics move at their own kind of pace and speed, and the things that you do that sort of legitimize you
Mhm.
as part of the culture, and or just somebody who's doing a book. Like, anybody can just do a book, but to be part of the idea of comics, Jason was already there and established. He had done Spawn. He had had a lot of indie work that was praised. He had been nominated for Eisner's already. He was in the system, and so he sort of brought me in like the mob and legitimized me
Nice,
to a way.
nice, nice. And that question of what comics allow you to do, I'm curious about what it's like to creating comics and then across media.
It's different. It's certainly different than being a television writer.
Mhm.
And because I've done television before comics. And the biggest difference for me was when I first started writing comics, I used too many words. If you look at
Mhm.
Falcon, I remember when my editor called me back with the notes from my first script, and he's like, "This script is ponderous." And I knew what the word ponderous meant. It wasn't like a compliment.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't have a reference point to what it meant. until I got the art back and I saw all of these words. And you could barely see the art because there were so many words. And I had to learn. It took like 3 issues of Falcon before I realized that I'm really there to support the art. The art is telling the story in a visual way. This is a visual medium. It's not like television where I have actors talking and a camera shooting it and music and sound to support. I'm really there to support the art and allow the art to tell the story. And
Mhm.
I had to learn how to say more with less. I had to learn how to say less words. I had to cut it down, like how it became addition by subtraction. And I think that has the first 3 series that I worked on were all kind of like boot camp in college and learning how to actually do this thing because you have to learn how pacing and rhythm. It's a completely different art form than what I've been doing up until that point.
Yeah, but sometimes it's more difficult, it seems like, to cut words than to add them. I know some people struggle to get to that word count mark, but once you have the words there, it's hard to let them go.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Killing your babies is in television what I've become accustomed to calling it. But I said something the other day. I'm working on a TV project right now, and um, I've found that as I go through drafts again and again and again to an insane amount, you realize what's really there's a difference between when I approach a scene, and this is in comics and in television. There is what my ego wants, and there's what the scene and the story want, and they very rarely align. And I have to be able to get out of my head. Like I may come up with what I think is a fantastic line. Like this is the greatest line ever. And sometimes that line will overwhelm the scene. And I'm keeping that line because I think it's so cool, but it doesn't serve what the characters want or what the story wants.
Mhm.
And I have to learn how to separate that want from what the story needs. And that was that thing with Falcon. I was trying to be Alan Moore. I was trying to be Neil Gaiman. I was trying to be these prosy guys who are incredible poets and artists in their own right. And I want to be that. And I don't know how to be another way. And so I had to learn how to be another way in order to be able to kind of find my own voice and find my footing in the world of writing comics.
Mhm. Very, very well said. And uh, curious about the what draws you to a particular type of story, be it suspense or thinking about Killadelphia here. Any particular beats that really get your engines firing as a creator?
I've always loved horror, and I've never been able to do it to the level that like I haven't been able to get the film work. I haven't been able to get options television work on television shows or option television shows that allowed me to operate in the space on a regular basis with with horror in the way that I wanted to. So Philadelphia was sort of it in horror to get that out of my system. But I've been fortunate in the sense that like working with companies like Dynamite and doing James Bond and Army of Darkness and just different tone, Star Wars, just different things to me make me a better storyteller.
Hmm.
I think that they give me an opportunity to sharpen. Can I do this? Because a lot of times I don't know if I can or I can't. I'm hoping for the best. But I always appreciate one of my favorite writers was Richard Matheson, who wrote I Am Legend. And he also wrote Kolchak and a lot of great Twilight Zone episodes and a lot of love stories and a bunch of different things that bent genre. Some things were horror, some things were science fiction. Um, and I wanted to be that kind of writer. Stephen King, too. I wanted to be able to write fantasy, sci-fi, horror, a lot of different things. I wanted to be a nimble writer. And I didn't necessarily have the confidence, or I think at some point the competency to be able to do it, but I think I had the aptitude. And the only thing that I think makes you better is actually doing it. So comics gave me an opportunity to practice, 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 gain some confidence, hopefully get better at it as I'm doing it, and just sharpen my tools.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any particular processes, rituals that sort of enable the process?
Yeah, I procrastinate. I obsess. I put it off as far. I make it as painful as it can possibly be. I go into this imposter syndrome, self doubt, fearful place. And then I start doing it. And then midway through, I ask myself, why did I do all of that to myself? I could have just sat down and wrote.
Yeah.
Stephen Pressfield has this great book called The War of Art, where he talks about resistance. And that is kind of dogged me my entire career, whether it was imposter syndrome or resistance. Those two, and I can call them different things, but I've as I've gotten older and I've gotten more experience, and I've gotten around better writers. I mean, I think that too. I changed as I moved up in various businesses and had the honor of being able to work with writers who were incredibly experienced, legendary in some cases. You pick up things. You pick up different ways of going about being a professional, managing yourself in difficult circumstances. I think that's made me better too. And so it's just a process. It's a cool process of being able to go through life and being engaged with an art form that requires you to bring yourself to the table.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Love that. I'm now also inspired to revisit some Richard Matheson stories, by the
It's a
way.
great thing to do. It's a
Yeah,
great thing.
yeah.
Bid time return. What became what dreams may come.
Hmm,
Some
hmm.
beautiful stuff in there. I Am Legend, of course. Beautiful, beautiful stories.
Yeah. Nightmare at 30,000
Yeah,
feet.
20 to 20, yeah, the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Hmm.
The William Shatner with
That's right. That's right.
the gremlin on the wing, or was it?
Maybe. Maybe.
Yes, maybe, maybe. Yes,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and sometimes stories that leave you with that moment of, wait, what did happen there? Those are
exactly.
the best. You keep thinking about them.
Big time.
Yeah. Well, as far as continuing to think about stories and lingering details, curious about where people can go, where are the best places they can go to learn about your work, to see what you're creating, and also any glimpse, any sort of notes about what you'd like to share for what's on the horizon, what's coming next.
Yeah, you can find me at the Rodney Barnes on Instagram and Twitter. Mostly Instagram. That's where I do a lot of videos about horror films and different things. I have a podcast called the Run Fool, and where I read scary stories.
Mm.
Which you can get on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or virtually any platform. Um, what's coming up? I mean, a bunch of comic books. I may be doing a Batman book. Um, more Killadelphia, a lot more Star Wars, a lot of Star Wars. For HBO, I'm writing a miniseries about the heavyweight champion Jack Johnson.
Hmm,
Um,
hmm.
few movies, a little bit of everything. I'm just trying to stay gainfully employed in this very difficult time, but doing my best.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly sounds like it, and excited to see a take on Batman. Excited to
Yeah.
see more to come in Philadelphia and Star Wars, and enjoy all the universes that you're creating in.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. Anything that we've missed before we close the episode that you'd like to make sure to share?
Not really. I mean, I just it's funny when people ask, but usually people that write comics, not well, I'll say sometimes when folks write comics, they're trying to get to TV, and I reverse engineered it
Hmm.
because I have a love for comic books. I'm not writing necessarily just to make TV shows or movies out of comic book ideas. I just
Yeah,
have always loved comic books from when I was a kid with my Neil Adams stuff, all the way through adulthood. I feel obligated to him in a way.
nice, nice. Yeah, I also owe a debt to comics in my reading life, so always glad to meet someone else who shares that passion.
You're definitely doing that.
Well, thank you. Glad to have you back anytime, Rodney. Safe travels in all the traffic as well
Yeah.
as all the spots that are coming for you to stop by and meet fans and things of that nature. And thank you for the time.
Fantastic. Thank you as well.